Now, today we want now to start with the SPSS software, and we actually want to learn on how this SPSS works, how it analyzes data, and we're going to learn how we'll be able to do what we call yes. Thank you, Mr. Mbai. I've recorded the session. Yeah. So we're going to learn on how to do what we call data entry manually or be able to import data. Now, before we continue, I would like us to learn a few things about data, and Abdi, kindly have the file that I had shared in the group. You can have it in your phone so that you actually use the computer for the SPSS. So allow me to share my screen. Then let me open the SPSS software. As it opens, okay, can you be able to see my screen?
Yes, teacher.
Thank you. Now on the screen, you're able to see that we have this this data tool collection, and as you can see, this file is known as is actually an interview form from NSSF, and nowadays, due to the emergence of this field called data analyst, you'll find organizations or even government departments using these data firms or data consultancies firms to do what we call data collection. So, what is data collection? So, data collection is simply means the process of gathering information for analysis. And the critical first step in analysis, this is where now we use our SPSS. And there are two ways whereby you can be able to collect what? Data. The two broad ways that are categorized into primary methods and secondary method. Now, in primary data collection, this is whereby data is original or primary data is whereby original data is collected. So you actually go to the field, you go to the community or specific audience that you are supposed to gather data from, and you do what we call you collect an original data that has never been collected by anyone for particular research or project. Now, some of the tools or ways in which this primary data collection method includes, the first one, you can use what you call surveys or questionnaires. On the screen, what you are actually using is what you call a questionnaire. This questionnaire means what? You'll first of all be able to introduce yourself there, and then this is the introduction part. After that, you'll come and do what? Start asking questions. What is your gender? What is your age in years? What is your occupation? So as you can see, this is an example of a what? A questionnaire. Apart from that, you can also use what you call interviews. You can also come to focus groups. Focus group means what? You have a moderated group discussion on a particular topic, and in most cases, it involves around 6 to 12 participants. Then you can also use what we call observations, whereby the researcher observes and records behaviors, events, or conditions as they occur naturally. And then still on primary way of collecting data. We have experiments. This is whereby we have controlled studies where variables are manipulated to observe their effects. And then also we have field trials. The second method of collecting data is what we call secondary data collection method. Now here, secondary data is data that already exists. Data that already exists. And this means that this data was collected by someone else for a different purpose at that time by the researcher who did that, who was doing that study. So what does that mean? So when it comes to secondary data collection, it means that you actually go and find data that was stored, or rather was collected and stored somewhere. Now, which are these examples? We have what you call administrative data. Now, in administrative data, you find that these are data collected by organizations, government departments, institutions during their day-to-day operations. An example is in Kenya. We have this part of the government that deals with what? Tax. So you'll find that this KRA, Kenya Revenue Authority, they actually have a lot of records when it comes to tax. When you go to health department, you'll find there is a lot of health records. And then when it comes to schools, we'll have what we call school enrollment data. Then another type of secondary data is what we call source is census data. So this is comprehensive data collected by government. Typically, for example, in Kenya, it takes around 10 years. Then we also have databases whereby large collections of structured data are stored. And this means that someone actually came up with the database. Then we have documents and records. We have web scrapping. We have social media and online platforms, and so on and so forth. So, coming back to what we have on our screen, actually, this is an example of what? A primary data. So, sorry for this. Now, this kind of primary data collection tool, which we have here, is actually a questionnaire. So what happens when it comes to this kind of a questionnaire? What are you going to do? You're actually going to go to the field and be able to have several questionnaires which you are going to use for an individual respondent, and being able to ask them question by question, and then being able to fill what in the form. For example, if you find the first respondent is a male, what are you going to do? You're going to tick this box. After that, you come to age, you come to occupation, you come to region, you come to maybe awareness, where were you, which were your sources of awareness about NSSF, and so on, until you come to the last part of the questionnaire. Now, assuming you have got 100 respondents, so that means you're going to have how many sheets or questionnaires? 100 of them. If there are 200, you're going to have 200 of them. Now, today, we want to learn how are you going now to analyze the 100 people that you had interviewed using the questionnaire. And something to note, this type of questionnaires, as I can say, is that it depends with the type of research that you are doing. So not all questionnaires come in this format. Not all questionnaires or interviews forms come in this format. This is just an example to help you to understand how to do it. So what are you going to do now? Abdi, kindly now open your SPSS. Open your SPSS. Now, I want us, before we start doing the data entry, because that's what you're going to do, I want us to understand a few things here. So we have two. If you look down here, we have two types of views. We have two types of views, and these two types of views, the first type of view is what we call the variable view. What we call the variable view, and the second type of view is what we call what? The data view. Now, in the first variable view, or if I make it simple, the one variable comes from what we call a question. And then when it comes to data view, here is where we'll be putting our responses, which is also known as cases. So when we want now to use our questionnaire, we must first input all the contents, or rather the questions. We must actually have all these questions, that is gender, age in years, region, the awareness part, that is which were your sources of awareness about national NSSF, as our questions, or rather as our variables. So let me come here. So what are you going to do? When it comes to variables, variable view, we have these parts here. We have the name, we have the type, we have the width, the decimals, the label, the values, the missing, the columns, the align, measure, and roll. Now we are going to learn each one of them and its purpose. Now let's start now here. Let's go back to our form here. Now, anytime you are doing any kind of data collection, you must always introduce yourself and say who you are. Now, in our questionnaire here, you can see, let me read it. Introduction, of course, you must write the dates. So, introduction, National Social Security Fund, as requested, Associate Consultant Africa Limited. Now, this is the company that has been given mandate to collect data on behalf of NSSF. So, Associate Consultant Africa Limited, to carry out a customer satisfaction survey. The management will use the results of this study to effect changes that will help NSSF play a significant role in attaining a vision. Please note that your views in form of responses to these questions will be treated with confidentiality. So you need to assure the respondents that whatever response he or she will give will be treated with utmost act of confidentiality. And also, you also need to get the consent. Even though I'm not saying it here, you also need to get what? The consent to proceed with the interview or the questions that you have. Now, after that, we don't need to have this introduction in our SPSS since we are not going to analyze it. So, what do you need? We only need what? The questions, the variables. And the first variable that we need to start with is what we call gender. So let's start now. So so for me, Abdi, I'll be I'll be navigating between the SPSS and the questionnaire form. So let me now navigate to the SPSS. Now we have this the first type of or the first part of a variable is what we call the name. So in the name, here you put the name of the variable. Now I want you to listen very carefully. When it comes to the name of the variable, you are only allowed to have one word. You are only allowed to have one word. And as I continue, in case I get lost or you are not hearing me, kindly use. Yes, I have a question here. Do we include a consent? Yes, it's good to include the consent in the questionnaire. You can see here it was actually excluded. So you need to, for example, you can actually have it here after the word confidentiality. You actually or you can have it actually go where you can have it here. Maybe you can say what? Do you agree to continue with the interview? Then you can have the sorry for this. I should have a dot. And then we can have what? Maybe yes. And then can have a no. Yes. So we can actually have this. But this consent part, we are not going to use it in our SPSS, because remember, we need to analyze the responses from the respondents. The consent means that if for example, if the first respondent says no, what does that mean? That will be the end of the interview. So if the respondent says yes, that means that you are given mandate to continue. Now let's continue. I hope that is clear, Mr. Mbai. So now let's come back to our SPSS, and we have this part called the first type of a variable is what we call the variable name. Now, as I was explaining, in the variable name, the SPSS only allows one name. But someone can ask, what if you have two or more words in the variable name? For example, if in our questionnaire we had something like gender of the respondents, or genders, or a respondent gender. Maybe you have respondent's gender. What are you going to do? And maybe you are required to write it the way it is. Now, in case you have, now in this case, we only have gender according to our form. But what happens? You have more than one word. You are not allowed in the name or the variable name to use spaces. Like, for example, you can write gender of the responses. These spaces are not allowed in the variable name. If you decide to do that, what have you seen there? You get an error that a variable name contains an illegal character. But again, there's solution for that. There's solution for that. So what are you going to do? You're going to write gender, then you use what you call an underscore. Use what you call an underscore, that is shift, and I hope you have understood that an underscore, then you write of maybe respondent. Let's see if you're going to get the same error. What has happened? It has actually allowed it because we used what? An underscore. So what does that mean? When you are giving, or when you are in SPSS and you find that the variable name has got more than one word and it's a must for you to use them, kindly use an underscore, do not use a space. But there is a column here specifically for what you call labeling. I'm going to explain it later. So in case you have a questionnaire and it has got more than one word, what can you do? Just use one word here. So allow me to delete this. So you can just have this gender here, and then we have a column where we are going to actually use more than one word to explain the variable name. Now allow me first to come to type. So here, as our form looked like, we only have what? Gender. We only have one word. So for this, it's okay. Now let's come to what you call data type. Now, as you can see, after writing the variable name, when I clicked on the variable or the type, actually what happened, by default, it actually inputted the numeric. Now here under numeric, once you click on it, we have these three dots. We have these three dots here. So I want you to click on these three dots here. So I want you to click on those three dots there. So once you click there, what you can see is what you call different types of data types. We have, these are just different types of data types. The first one is numeric by default. We have a comma, which is a data type. We have dot. We have a scientific notation. We have date. We have dollar. Custom. You can custom currency, and you have string. And sorry, the last one is string. And these are not the only data type that we have. There are so many types of data types. Now, in SPSS, we only have two main types of, or rather, the two main types of data that we are going to talk about today are numeric and string. Why? Why am I saying this? It's because these two types of data type, that is numeric and string, these are the most widely used types of data type. That is numeric and string. So if I can explain a bit about numeric data type and string data type. So numeric comes the word numbers. Numeric comes from the word numbers. So any data type that comes in terms of values or numbers falls under category numeric. And then the second type of data, which is string, which I said is commonly used, that is string. Maybe to explain it, is that a string is any text, or rather any response that comes in the form of text, statements, or words. So for example, if you come back to our form here, what is our response here? Mail. You see here, the responses are in what? Are in string. So anytime you have any response in form of text or word or statement, that data type is called what? It's called a string. So let me repeat for the last time, is that we are going only to talk about numeric and string. And numeric is any data type in form of values, and string is any response or any text or any data that comes in form of what? Text, statement, or words. Are we together up to that point, Abdi? Can you use emojis? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Francis. So, what happens? If I may ask, kindly use the chat box. If I may ask, according to my explanation, what is gender? Is gender a numeric data type or a string data type? Kindly use the chat box. Abdi, I believe in giving the response. Don't worry if it is, don't worry whether it's correct or wrong. We all learn through mistakes. And something I'll tell you is that when you give a response, you will always remember that answer. You'll always remember whatever you said. In case you said it wrongly, you remember, that I gave that answer. It was not that one. This was correct. So I'm waiting for your responses. I want us to this class to be interactive as much as possible. So I'm waiting for your responses. Thank you, Francis String. What about Abdi? Abdi, I'm waiting for your response. So that can numeric. Very good trial. Now, very good trial. Now, if I may explain now, Mr. Bai was correct. It is a string data type. Now, Abdi, gender is not a numeric data type. I know why you are saying that. It's because you are seeing that it has selected numeric. I'm going to explain why it has done that. So, gender is a string data type. Why? Because I said anything in data analysis that is in form of text, that is in form of what? Text. Gender. When you talk about gender, you either talk about you are either a male or a female. If I may give another example of string is region. Region, we have Nairobi, we have the response is in text. Are we? Yes, I'm seeing. Oh, string is text from the respondents like test. Yes, Abdi. So as you can see, yes. And then numeric is number, correct. Numeric is number. For example, age in years. What is your age? When I may ask someone like Abdi, maybe you are going to tell me I'm 20 years old, I'm 30 years old, like that. Is that clear? So when you talk about numeric, data type is, for example, is age. When you talk about age, what is your age? You say, my age is 20 years. How much salary do you earn? I earn 100,000. So that is string. Sorry, numeric. When it comes to string, thank you. It's like the test that you have given. Thank you so much. So let's continue. Now, here, as we have said, that gender, the data type for gender is string, as you have agreed. But you can see by default, the SPSS placed numeric as the data type. Now, I'm going to explain this. We are not going to use here string as data type in the SPSS, even though the data type for gender is string. So we are only going to use what? Numeric, even though the gender is not, the data type for gender is not numeric. Are we together up to that point? Abdi. I'll repeat again. The data type for gender is string. So let's agree on that. If you go to any book, any tutorial, the data type for gender is string. But I'm saying we'll have to use it, or we are going to tell the SPSS that gender is numeric. So we are going to leave it as numeric. Why are we leaving it, or rather, why are we leaving this gender, or rather, why are we placing the data type, the gender, why are we placing that new data type for the gender as numeric, when we know very well that the data type is what? String. Let me now explain. SPSS has been built. SPSS has been built to analyze data types in numeric, or rather, as it has only been built to analyze numeric data type. So, or to make it simpler, I can say is that SPSS only analyze data in numeric data type, or SPSS has not been built to understand text, words, or statements. Or in simpler terms, SPSS has been built has not been built to understand string data type. So there is somewhere here in values where we are going to explain to SPSS that yes, we have a string data type, but we want the SPSS to analyze it for us. Is that clear to that point? Yes. So let's continue. So as I said, we are going to leave this as numeric, but we are going to explain to SPSS that we have a string data type, but we want to analyze it. Now let's come here now to width. Now when it comes to width, here it's actually the number of characters to be analyzed. And here, in most cases, we find that by default, we have the number as 8. So don't interfere with that number. Just leave it the way it is, unless you now want to specify. The number of characters that you want to analyze. For example, if you place 3 here, it means you will have to do what? You will have to have the variable to be only 3 characters. For example, the one like joy. But for now, let's just leave it the way it is. So you're going to leave it at 8. The default, the number of character. By default, it will only have 8. But that does not mean that it's going to limit you to have the number of words that you, the number of characters that you want to use. So here in width, just leave the way it is to be 8. Then let's come now here to decimals. Now in decimals, here is when now you want to, rather it depends with the variable that you are using. For example, you might be having, for example, here in the variable name, maybe you have something like a salary. So it depends. Maybe you want this variable name or variable name to have 2 decimal places, 3 decimal places, like that. But in our case now, do we really need a decimal? We don't. So here we can remove the decimal, the number of decimal places. So here you can leave it as 0. Now let's come now to the label, and I'll take you back when I was introducing or when I was talking about the variable name. I said you can just have one word. When it comes here to the label, here you are given chance now to explain more about the variable name, or rather to give more information about the variable. So here you can actually say what? You are given a chance to explain more about the variable name. So you can actually say what? There, maybe you can say respondents respondents name. Can have what you call respondents name here, or you can have any information, or rather you are allowed here to give more information about the variable name. And in the label you're allowed to do what? To use spaces. As you can see here, I've used what? Space. So it's only in the variable name where you are not supposed to use space, but in the label you can use space. So this is just an advice. When you will be having this, when you'll be using this SPSS, and you are given a questionnaire, and you find that whoever came up with that questionnaire, maybe in the variable name, he or she has used maybe more than one word. So you can decide to use one word in the variable name. Then in the label, you can now come and use the more than one word to explain more about the variable name. Now, let's now come here to the most important part here, where we call the values. Now, in the values, this is whereby now you explain. This is whereby now you come and explain to SPSS that even though we have a string data type, we are going to assign to them values, which now the SPSS will be able to use it to analyze the data. So I want you to click on the values, and then at the right, at the corner there, we have three dots there. So I want you to click on it. So, and then let's look at our form here. So when you ask the question gender, actually you are supposed to do what? To get a response, either male or female. So what happens here? Remember, the response given here will be in form of either male or female. So what do we need to do? We need to have values. Remember, we said SPSS only, or rather has been built to analyze data in numeric. So we have got now a chance to be able to use numeric and connect it and be able to communicate to SPSS that even though we have a string variables, but we can label it as we can give values to the strings. Now here in the form we have two responses, that is male and female. So here in the value you can use any value 0 to 9, and I'm going to use 1, and then the label given here, or rather the response, will be male. So we have 1 for male, and then 2 will have female, and then you add. And don't always use 1 for male, 2 for female. You can even decide to use what? 0 for male, 2 for female, 5 for male. It just depends on how you want to come up with your analysis. And then as you do that, ensure that you have noted somewhere that value 1 represents what? Male. And then value 2 represents what? Female. So that now, when you will be now filling, remember that, for example, you have 100 forms. These forms are responses from the people that you interviewed. So if the first respondent was a male, remember you had ticked here. But in your SPSS, what did you indicate? You actually indicated that for male, you'll be using what? 1. For female, you'll be using what? 2. And that one, I think now you now understand what I was saying initially, that SPSS only understands numeric data. You're going to see that. So let's go back to our SPSS. Now in our first variable, we only had what? 2 responses. So we are finished with that. Let's come now here. After you assign the strings, the values, you click on OK. And then now you come to missing. Now in the missing column, this is where now you handle missing values, if applicable. Now let me come back here and explain something. I'll give an example. For example, nowadays, due to this what we call urbanization, you'll find that there are people who refer to themselves, or rather, they refer to themselves not being either not they don't fall either under male or female. I think you have come across that, and in most cases, this is found in urban places, like in big cities. We don't see such cases in rural areas. So you'll find this person will not be happy to either to be referred as either male or female. What are you going to do? Here, you're going to assign a value. So for example, if you assign a value, and don't add this because it's not in the questionnaire, I'm just explaining. And then we have the 0. Then you can say what? Others, or any other name. Then when it comes here, you see these others, and maybe this questionnaire, let's assume it was included here. And let's assume this type of interview was done in a rural area, in a very rural area. What happens here? We are very certain that in that rural area, you are not going to get anyone who will be happy to be referred as others. So what will happen to the third part, these others? It's actually going to fall under what? Missing values, because you are not going to find anyone. You are not going to find anyone who will fall under the category for others. But in case you come in an urban setup, you are not going to get at least 1 or 2. But if you are doing this, you are conducting this interview in a very rural area, you are not going to get any data on, or rather any response on others. I hope that is clear to that point. So I'm going to remove that because you are not going to use it. It's not in our questionnaire. So maybe to make you understand better, you can have a situation like, for example, you have gone to a high school, and then you ask a question like, what is your when did you get your first degree? And remember, you are in a high school. You're asking about a degree, and actually you're asking a student who has not even finished the high school level. So that data will fall under missing. Now let's continue. Let's come here to columns. Now columns, in columns, actually this deals with what? The size of the variable name. I'm going to do it as an example. Now, I want you now to click on the data view and see the size of what? The size of the I'm seeing a question here. Let me see. Is it based on probability? I mean, those referred as others. Yes, in some cases, yes or no, but it's not actually in terms of probability, but it is actually yes. In some cases it might be in yes, we can actually base it on probability because uh, in rural areas, if someone finds if you are got with the villagers, you'll actually be taken as an outcast. And it's not even about rural or urban. Even in some religions, you are not allowed even to speak about it. So we can actually say maybe probability, and in some cases not. But in an urban setter, I'm very sure you can get one or two, although they live in secrecy. So have I answered you, Mr. Mbai? Yeah, thank you. So that is it. Now, as I said, I want us to click, since we are in variable view, I want you to click on the data view. Look at the size of the column of the gender. Look at the size. Now, I want you to go back to the variable view. What value has been placed here? It is 8. So I want you to change this value to 50. I want you to change it to 50. I want you to do it practically so that I can explain it so you can understand. So have you changed to 50? After changing, I want you to click on the data view and tell me what you have observed. So have you observed something? Actually, what has happened? The size of the column has increased. So what is the work of these columns here? Is actually to increase or reduce the size of the columns. For example, in this case is the variable name, the gender. So if you want to increase the size of the variable name, you come and increase here. If you want to reduce, you can reduce this to maybe 26. You click there, you see it is decreasing. You see? So as you decrease, you see the variable name, the size of the column of the variable name is decreasing. Now, there is other ways. Instead of using here, you can come here and actually come in between that column and the next one and be able to resize depending on the size of your columns. Yes, I'm seeing a question here. Yes, Abdi. What is the maximum number of columns? What is the maximum number of columns? What is the maximum number of columns? Maybe, did you refer what is the maximum size of the column? Is that what you mean? Abdi, yes. Oh, yeah. No, okay. One thing I can tell you here, this depends on the size of the variable name. You can have it as big as you want, but remember one thing, Abdi. If you decide now to have, let's say, let me do it practically. Don't do it. Let me put here as 200. Let me just do that. What will happen? And remember, we have other variables here. We have other questions that we must input. Will you be able to view others? Are you seeing? Again, so you're seeing? Yes. So if you have other questions, are you be able to see them? You need to do what? To scroll. So it will be a bit stress for you to view them. So what are you going to do? Make sure that you put a size that is reasonable. Is that clear? And then whereby you have a variable name that is longer, you need to increase the size of your columns. Is that clear? So here, actually this part here, column here, is actually where you put you play with the size of the variable, the column variable name. Have I answered you, Abdi? Have I answered you? Thank you, thank you. So if you have a very long variable name, make sure you increase the size. Now let me do a practical example. For example, if you have put 4, what will happen to your variable name? Are you seeing? Are you seeing what's happening? Yeah. So here you have to be creative. So let's put as 8. Now let's come to alignment. Now alignment, when you are dealing with a numeric data type, the alignment is always right. If you are dealing with a string data type, it could have used what? Left. Is that true? Yeah. So I think that this one you can relate. If you open a new word, let me explain this. For example, word always deal with what? Text. The alignment is left. When it comes to Excel, allow me to open an Excel. When I double click inside, you write, for example, 4, you find that the alignment is what? Right. Are we together up to that point? So the alignment is for numeric is right, and then for, let me close this, for text is what? Sorry, for string is left. Thank you. So let me come back here. Okay, so the alignment, just leave it the way it is. Is that clear? Yes. Now let's come now to measure. The measure column. Now under measure column, we have 3 measures. So these ones are simply measure level. These are measure level. I'm going to explain each one of them. What it means. And I'm going to start with scale. Scale. Now, scale in SPSS, the variable that falls under scale is a variable that measures a continuous quantity. It's a variable that measures a continuous quantity such as age, weight, or income. So it is typically used for interval or a ratio data. Now, if you see here, we don't have any ratio that has been used in the gender, whereby we only used what? Values. When it comes to ratio, I think you understand what you call to ratio. So let me continue. So it's typically used for interviews or ratio data, where differences between values are meaningful and can be interpreted quantitatively. Is that clear? So we have 2 types of scales. The first one is interval scale and ratio scale. Now, the second type here, ordinal. So in SPSS, an ordinal variable is a variable that measures a quantity with ordered categories. Whereby you have maybe some kind of order. And the good thing with this questionnaire, in this questionnaire, we are going to use the 3 types. So don't worry for now. For now, you might find a bit hard to understand, but with time, when you'll be using each of the measure, you're going to understand. So let me repeat again about ordinal type of measure. So in SPSS, an ordinal variable is a variable that measures a quantity with ordered categories. So in ordinal, we have order in which these variables are ordered. Then examples of ordered variables, we have rankings, we have education levels, and we also have Likert scales. Then nominal measure, that type that is the nominal measure. Now in SPSS, a nominal variable is a variable that measures categories with no inherent order or ranking. And this category are simply different labels or names, without any quantitative relationship between them. Examples of nominal variables includes what? Gender. For example, gender, male or female. Male, for example, when you say gender, we have male, female, or other. The one that you have just used. We are going to use marital status. When you talk about marital status, these are example of nominal variables. Marital status, we have single, married, divorced, cowed. Color, we have red, blue, green, yellow. And then we have country. That is, for example, we can have United States, Canada, Somalia, Kenya. That is it. So, when now we come to our data, the variable gender, where does it fall? Does it fall under scale, ordinal, or does it fall under scale, ordinal, or nominal? According to my explanation, the chat box. Or can I repeat again? Can I repeat? Thank you, nominal. What about Abdi? Abdi, I'm waiting for your response. Where does it fall? Yes, are we together, Abdi? Abdi, I'm waiting for your response. Abdi, are you in class? Yes, I can see you in class. So it falls under what? Nominal measure. I have some notes I'm going to share so that you can maybe look at it and understand it better. So then we come to the column called role. Now the role, this is just the default or how the software operates. Input. So you're just going to leave it the way it is. So don't use any other. Just put what? Input. You're going to be inputting the data or the responses. So this is how simply the software works. Now let's go now to the second question for the second variable. The second variable here is what? Age in years. Age in years. As you can see, we have 3 words. And for practice, I'm going to use it the way it is. But remember, I'm not allowed to do what? To use spaces. So what am I going to do? So the variable name is age, put an underscore in years. If you don't do that, you're going to get what? An alert that it's an illegal character. Up to that point, are we together? Kindly use emojis. I don't want to be too fast. Thank you, Francis. Thank you. Now, let me ask a question again. What is age in years? You can see that this is a string, but we are going to place it and leave it the way the SPSS has input as numeric. So we are not going to change here anything. Again, in the width, we are not going to change anything. Again, when it comes to decimal, age in years does not require what? Decimals. So we are going to reduce this to 0. What about the label? We say the label tells us more about the variable name. So here we can write what? Respondents, or let me write age of the respondent. Yes, age of the respondent. Then now we come to values. Here we click on the 3 dots. Then we look at our questionnaire. What do we have? So we are going to assign values. We're going to assign values. So you're going to say 1 equals to category 18 to 24 years. Then you add. Then value 2 falls under what? 25 to 34. 25 to 34. 25 to 34. And it's not a must for you to use any order. So you can use whatever order that you want. But for me, let's just use these numbers. The next one is category 35 to 44. Then you add. And I'm not using any order. Then we have 45 to 54. 54. And then the last one is 55 plus. 55 plus. So you can say value. Let me decide to use 0. Or let me just use 0 so that it does not appear that it's a ranking. So you can say 55 plus, or 55 and above. 55 and above. Then you add. So after doing that, yes, I can see that Abdi, you have an issue with the. Kindly unmute so that can understand what the problem that you are undergoing. Kindly unmute. Abdi, are you in a position to unmute? Or maybe do you have you have lost power? Now let me go back to where I was. Because I believe now the recording is okay. It's up and running. Yes, thank you. Now let me go back to where we were. So I'm going to remove all this. Now, as I was saying, let's now go and practice and input data. So we can input 1 and maybe here. So we can have what here? Let's say 3. And I said you must remember which values you are using when you are assigning to this string data type, or when you are communicating to Excel. Sorry, not SPSS. So in gender, you only have 2 values. So you are going to be using only 1 or 2. And then in age in years, you'll be using either 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So assuming the first respondent was a male, you're going to input what? 1. And if the respondent, for example, if the respondent's age was in between 25 and 34, is between 25 and 34, you're going to do what? You're going to put what here? Maybe that range is in, let's say 2. Then here, you can say it was a female. She was a female, sorry. And then maybe the age was 55 plus. Here we put 0. And then that respondent was a male, maybe category 5. Maybe the other one was a female, category 2. Then this one, let's say 4. And then say category 5. And then I said, when you are working on this data, as you continue, ensure that you verify if you are doing the correct thing. Ensure that you verify if you are doing the correct thing. So I want us to come to view and view what you have done if it is correct. So you click here on the value labels, and you can see somewhere in 2 places we have, in actually 3, we still have values instead of actual data. So what does this mean? It means that these values that are indicating here, they were not assigned any values. They were not assigned any values. And we can actually confirm, for example, let's start with gender. When it comes to gender, in the variable here in the values, the only values that were assigned were what? 1 and 2. But when you come here, when you are inputting the data, you put what? 4. So what does it mean? You have to go back and rectify that. Let's come here to age in years. Age in years, there was no value that was assigned 5. The last one was, it was actually 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There was no value 5 that was assigned any category age in years. So what are you going to do? You come back here, you change view in, you remove the value labels, then you either put 1 or 2. And then here, you make sure you put the correct value. Then from there, you can come back and view and see if your data is okay. As you can see, our data now is okay. And I can continue inputting data until I finish. Is that clear up to that point? Any question up to that point? Thank you. Now, as I had said, I need now to give you an assignment. And the assignment that I want to give it to you, I want you to do only 2. That is the occupation and the relationship to the contributor. Is that clear? Mr. Mbai and Abdi? So I'm going to repeat. I'm going to do some kind of revision. So what are you going to do? Here in the variable name, ensure that you input there. And this is the assignment that you're going to do it at. Actually, I'm going to give you in between today and Thursday. So don't do it right now. Just listen. This is an assignment. You're going to do it. You have got tomorrow up to Wednesday. Make sure you have done it before our next class. So here in the variable name, ensure that if you have more than one word, ensure you use an underscore. Don't use a space. Then here the data type must be a numeric. Here the width, leave it the way it is, 8. Here in the decimal, if you don't require any decimal, you put it 0. Here at the label, you actually explain more about the variable name. Then here in the values, ensure that you assign, for example, employed, you assign a value, whereby you are going to come here, you click on the three dots, and then you, for example, you come here to employed, you give it a value. For example, you can give any number. You're allowed to use any number. Don't stick to 1 and 2. You can use any number. Make sure, but ensure that you remember. And then you give a value to, then you say, for example, employed. Then you add. And as you can see, there's something you have to note here. Why are you having this decimal here? Why are having this decimal here? It's because of this. Is that clear? So you make sure you remove this decimal. Is that clear to that point? Yeah. So as you can see, then you come here, columns, ensure that you actually have the size, the right size. Then you leave it here. Then I want you to actually indicate the measure. I'm going to share the notes about the measure. I'm going to share the notes so that you can read and be able to give the correct answer here on the measure, both for occupation and the relationship to the contributor. Is that clear? And remember the variable name for the first one is occupation, and the second one is what? The second one is relationship to the contributor. Actually, it's not a must for it to be the way it is, but you can actually try to be creative as much as possible. Now, any question up to that point? Any question in regards to the assignment that I've given? Let me start with Mr. Abdi. Oh, you're okay. You're okay. Thank you so much. Mr. Mbai, are you okay?
Yes, okay, there is no any question.
Now, let's now save our work. Let's learn on how to save our file. Okay. So, here we have the menu. So, I want you to click on File, because if we don't save this file and click on Close, we are going to lose all this work that we have done. So, I want you to click on File. Then, you click on what? Save As. Once you click on Save As, I want you to choose where you want to save your work. So mine, I'm going to create a folder in the desktop. I'm going to create a folder. So you select where you want to save your work. So you can decide to save it in the desktop. So once you click here, you click on the desktop. So I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to name it. Maybe SPSS cohorts, or SPSS SPSS maybe September 2024. So you can give your own name. Then from there, it's good to learn to have them in a specific folder so that you can locate it quickly. So have you created a folder? You can create it in the documents, you can create it in the desktop, and then click on open. Then come here and give it a name. So you can actually give which name? This is, maybe you can call it NSSF data. And then, as you can see here, we have this save type. Now, don't change here. Actually, all SPSS files are usually saved with this extension .sav. Then you do what? Once you have given it a name, you click on save. Since we are not doing any analysis, you will see this output coming out. We don't need it. Just click on it and close it. So you can see once you click your work, you are told that closing the last data edit will exit. So are you sure you want to do this? You click yes. And if you access your file, what are you going to do? You're going to open the desktop. Then you actually come here and look for the folder you created today, Spss, the folder. Then you'll be able to get your file there. So let's wait that it opens. So have you been able to save your work? So I want you to save it and go and open it before we end the session. So let's give it a minute as it opens and confirm if you have our data or you have lost our data. Yes, so you can see. Yes. Yeah, you can see I have my data here. Is that clear? So have you been able to access your file? Yes, I'm waiting for your response.
Okay, it's telling me to double click it to activate it. I don't know what I'm activating.
Well, okay. Does it have maybe
It's telling me there is output, there is log, something like that.
okay. Do this. Just close it. Okay, let's use another way whereby you are going to open the SPSS. Just open the SPSS first.
Mm-hmm.
Let's use the other way. Mhm. Now, I want you to click on File, then Open, then you come to Data. Are you together at that point, Mr. Mbai and Abdi?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
I want you to select where you actually saved your work. You see mine is, so in case it was a desktop, click on the desktop. If it is another place, then did you save it in a folder?
It's okay now. I can now be able to see it.
Thank you. Okay, so it has opened.
Yes.
Thank you. So what about Abdi? Are you together up to that point?
Yeah. Thank you, teacher.
Thank you so much. So before we end today's session, any question? So we have come actually to the end of today's session. So I'll highly request that you work on those assignments before the next class so that we can continue.